Today is the release of The Legend of Zelda Game & Watch, which was announced back in June at E3. What is it going to have? You will find out today on this episode of the Video Game Chronicles. Alright folks, now it's time to talk about the new Zelda Game & Watch, which came out today. I just wanted to let you know that I've actually pre-ordered 2 copies of The Legend of Zelda Game & Watch. And before I found out about this one announcement, I thought about one thing. First off, of course you know, Super Mario Bros. Game & Watch, which was released last year, I bought. Now, there were at least 3 games on here, and all 3 were the same. And of course, the 2 games that were on here were released Super Mario Bros. Games that were released on the NES and Famicom Disk System back in the day. And I'm talking about Super Mario Bros. And Super Mario Bros. 2, the Japanese release. Super Mario Bros. Japanese release was released for the Famicom Disk System back in 1986, which of course, Super Mario Bros. 2, the Japanese release, is also celebrating its 35th anniversary, but I've already played it, so. But the reason why I got this and didn't decide to track down the Japanese release is because this is all the same. It has every single version and there's nothing to worry about when it comes to different versions, because the games that are on here are all the same version as no matter what that was released, no matter what region that you're from. So I didn't have a problem there with just getting one Game & Watch for the Super Mario Brothers. However, when it comes to Legend of Zelda, surprisingly enough, there are different regions of Zelda games. And of course, Zelda 1 and 2 are examples. And of course, I got all of the releases. I got the Famicom Disk System versions of Zelda 1 and 2, and I got the NES versions of Zelda 1 and 2. And up until the announcement, I was going to say that if you wanted to get both regions, both versions of The Legend of Zelda, since guess what? There are certain differences with The Legend of Zelda 1 and 2. And I was going to tell you that if you want to get both versions, you're going to have to get 2 Game & Watches. That was before I heard about the announcement. Here's what was announced. And it's actually great news for people that don't want to go out of their way to get 2 Game & Watches just to get every single version of The Legend of Zelda on the Famicom Disk System and NES. Because you're going to get all versions. That is right. You're going to get the Famicom Disk System versions of Zelda 1 and 2, and you're going to get the NES versions of Zelda 1 and 2, all on one Game & Watch. And also, I don't have Link's Awakening, so I can't show the Game Boy versions of both the Japanese and US because I don't have those. But also, it's the same with Link's Awakening as well, meaning that you're getting the Japanese and the US versions all on one Game & Watch. And you're getting, of course, a new game, which, of course, will have Link as the character, and that's Vermin. So you're getting all of that, and surprisingly enough, that's a great deal. And plus, for people that live in PAL territories, they're going to get the game in 60 frames per second. Because I know for a fact, when it comes to PAL regions, back when they used to probably play Zelda and whatever not, it was in 50 frames per second. And when it comes to the different regions, that's a problem. But the good news is it's in 60 frames, so you'll be able to get the game without any problems whatsoever, and you're going to be able to play how it was originally intended in 60 frames per second. Because I know that England is, and places where the PAL regions are going to get the same version. So that is pretty cool. So that's that. But now it's time to talk about what is different between both versions. So that way you'll know why both versions are so different. You're going to find out. Now when it comes to Zelda, there isn't really much differences between the two. There are some differences though. And it's not really that much of a difference. But there's stuff that you should know. And by the way, there's also a website that you can check out that tells you the differences between the Famicom Disk System version and the NES version. And there's also a book called Legends of Localization, which of course also tells about the differences, and it also includes additional content. And of course I bought it so that way I could read it and find out the extras that are included in this book that you don't get at the website. But I will tell you, one of the differences is with the music. There are some differences with the music, because when it comes to the Famicom Disk System, it actually had some extra sound channels. But unfortunately, that could not be done with the NES. And as a result, the NES version of the sound and the music is actually quite different. I will say that not all the music that's in this are different from the Famicom Disk System version. There's just some differences. And that's mostly with the sound channels, because the NES version couldn't copy what the Famicom Disk System had to offer. Another difference is with the text. The text is quite different from the NES release, because when the Famicom Disk System version was released, the font for the text was actually quite different. When it comes to the NES version, they decided to basically do another font style and make it much more improved for Western audiences, and that's what they did. And that's the reason why the text looks like that when it comes to the NES version. Now the final big change was with Pols Voice. Now in the Famicom Disk System version, there was a way to kill Pols Voice with ease. And what was done was they decided to use the Famicom microphone in order to kill the Pols Voice with ease. And if you talk through the microphone, it would instantly kill Pols Voice. Now, certain things were done with certain ports of The Legend of Zelda in Japan, because there was no Famicom microphone for those particular ports. And as a result, there were alternatives done for those particular ports. Now when it comes to the NES version, however, because there was no microphone on a controller, since the Famicom microphone was on the second controller, they decided to use arrows instead. So arrows is the easiest way to kill Poe's voice on the NES version. Now there are some more differences, but they're only slight and they're really not much to talk about. If you want to know more about the differences between the Famicom Disk System version and The Legend of Zelda, I will have a link down below in the description box to the website Legends of Localization, so that way you'll know a little more about the differences between the Famicom Disk System version and the NES version of Zelda. Zelda 2 has tons of differences compared to the original Legend of Zelda, and I'm going to name a few for you. The level up system is way different. The Famicom Disk System version, you can pick your power up no matter which experience point that you get to. But there is a catch. If you get a game over, whatever is the lowest level for one power up, you go back to that level for all three. And you have life, magic, and attack. If you have two that's higher than the one that is lower, that level that is lower you go back to. And you can't cancel out if you really want to get to a certain experience point. You can level up whatever you want. The NES version, you can't level up what you want. You have to get to a certain experience point in order to get that power up that you want to increase. And it takes quite a bit. Now, the Famicom Disk System version, the experience points that you can go up to is 4,000. This goes up to 9,000 experience points, because once you level up all of your power-ups and get to that amount of experience point, if you are able, you will get an extra life no matter which version that you're playing. However, it's much harder in the NES version. But there are a few advantages, I should say. You can cancel out and have to get to a certain experience point to get to the power-up that you want, or you can do it your own way and just level up the power-up that the experience point allows you for. Now the good news is, if you get a game over, you don't lose any of the levels that you're on for your power-ups, meaning that you stay on that level for the power-ups that you have increased your levels for. The temples, with the exception of the Great Temple, the Famicom Disk System version, the temples are all the same. They look all the same. There was no changes made, and with the exception of a few color changes, the temples look the same, with no changes made with every single temple. The NES version, the temples look different. Every single time you go to a different temple, the temples look different. meaning that Nintendo went back and decided to make changes with the temples for Western audiences. So this has a little more polish when it comes to the temples. The bosses in both versions are about the same, with exceptions. The second and fifth temples are different in both versions. The Famicom Disk System version has Helmet Head in both temples. However, there's a difference. The second temple has an easier version of Helmet Head, and the fifth temple has a harder version of Helmet Head. Now, the only difference between the easy and hard versions is that these helmets float around and try to attack you. There's only one with the easier version of Helmet Head, while there's two for the harder version. The fifth temple doesn't have Helmet Head in the NES version. No, there's a new boss, and I can't pronounce it, but I think it's Guma or Goma. I don't really remember, but there's a new boss for the fifth temple. The second temple does have Helmet Head, but instead of having the easier version of Helmet Head, they put the harder version of Helmet Head for the second temple instead. And like I mentioned, the harder version of Helmet Head just has two helmets floating around trying to attack you. And the sixth temple does have a dragon, but they are different designs. And those are the only real differences for the sixth temple for each version. And that's just some of the differences between the Famicom Disk System version and the NES version of Zelda 2. Now, there are certain things about them. One thing, I do like that they use the FM synthesis chip for this particular game, since the Famicom Disk System version allowed for FM synthesis, where the NES version couldn't duplicate that. Another thing that I liked about this is that the water moves in the Famicom Disk System version, where this doesn't. And those are just some of the differences, and there's quite a bit, and I could go on and on and on, but I have to move on. And I do want to let you know that are certain things with Link's Awakening, both in the Japanese version and the American version, that are quite different. But because I don't have those particular versions, I'm not going to do a comparison. But of course, with both the English and Japanese versions going to be on the Game & Watch, you're going to be able to play both versions. And I will show you screenshots of the different versions of the English and Japanese versions of Link's Awakening in pictures, so that way you get to see the changes that were made between the two. Now, I pre-ordered 2 Zelda Game & Watches because I thought both versions of Zelda's 1 and 2 and Link's Awakening, I thought they weren't going to be all included in one Game & Watch. I thought that the American release was only going to get the NES versions of Zelda 1 and 2 and the Game Boy version that was released in the United States of Link's Awakening. Well, I thought the Japanese release of The Legend of Zelda Game & Watch was only going to have the Famicom Disk System versions of Zelda's 1 and 2 and the Japanese version of the Game Boy game Link's Awakening on that particular release. I thought that, and that's the reason why in advance I bought 2 Zelda Game & Watches. One from PlayAsia, one from another website. And the other website is a US website. And I was big time wrong. I didn't expect the news that it was going to have both versions of Zelda 1 and 2 and Link's Awakening on it. I didn't expect that news. I only found out recently. And I pre-ordered both Zelda Game & Watches in advance. I actually pre-ordered them 2 months ago, thinking that both versions weren't going to be included. That's why I bought 2 Zelda Game & Watches. But now I know the news. Now the good news is, I'm going to give you all good news. If you pre-ordered through PlayAsia, they have it discounted. And you probably got that news because you probably ordered the Legend of Zelda Game & Watch in advance. You probably ordered it like how I did a couple of months ago. Mine was discounted. So I'm actually getting it cheaper, and hopefully I'll be getting the additional money that I had to pay to pre-order the Zelda Game & Watch back into my bank account because of the new discounted Legend of Zelda Game & Watch that's on PlayAsia right now. It's available on PlayAsia right now, and you can find the Legend of Zelda Game & Watch no matter which region you're from on certain store websites. And you could probably also find the Legend of Zelda Game & Watch at your local store. So the good news is, if you ordered through PlayAsia and you pre-ordered it quite a bit ago, they're going to credit you. If you probably already know. You probably already got credited and whatever now. And surprisingly enough, you're even allowed to use the money for future PlayAsia purchases, which is pretty cool. However, I decided that I wanted mine back in my bank account because I might want to use it for something important in the near future. But that's the news with PlayAsia. The good news is, if you pre-ordered quite a bit of months ago for the Zelda Game & Watch, you've been discounted. So, and that was a pretty cool thing that PlayAsia did. So as a result, I'll be getting 2 Zelda Game & Watches, and I'm not canceling the other pre-order. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep both pre-orders, and I'm going to do a video on the Legend of Zelda Game & Watch, and you're going to be seeing it pretty soon. Because what I'm doing, and it will start on Tuesday, I'm doing 2 weeks of Legend of Zelda games, which is pretty cool. And hopefully one of those weeks, I will review the new Legend of Zelda Game & Watch. All for you guys. So thank you all for watching. And if you have not subscribed, please do so. And if you like this video, definitely subscribe. And you can get notifications of new videos by clicking the notification bell. Thank you all for watching. Stay safe and stay awesome, and happy gaming. And happy 35th anniversary, Legend of Zelda.